KUTV's Rise today is live on Facebook at KUTV Kenya. All across our social media platforms, you can find me at KUTV_Kenya, at Richard_Okenya, the hashtag to use Rise today, and then you can put a bit of Biashara Tuesday right there after that hashtag. I asked you earlier on when we were starting the show, how you feel the political decisions and activities in this country are affecting the business that you are conducting, that is in line with the BBI referendum politics that is happening in the country, as well as the measures that were given by the president about 2 weeks ago in terms of curbing the spread of COVID-19 in the country. Extension of the curfew, making sure that bars and restaurants are closed by 9 p.m. How do you feel this is affecting business? So earlier on I had sampled the effects of curfew on business and in accordance to how you guys have tweeted me up. I'm going to read BBI, the effect that you feel, some of you feel the BBI has if affected business in the country. Now, in the midst of corona business, this one is saying that a breed of hyenas are ensuring that we do not conduct business. That is Gishuru Jr. Please, Gishuru Jr., tell me exactly how you feel that breed of hyenas is making you not conduct your business. Kenya is broke and is going for a loan from the IMF. This is, you're saying, David Mutai on Twitter is saying Kenya is broke and is going for a loan from the IMF, but Kenya has 14 billion for a BBI referendum. You feel like that is not right. I don't know what else some of you feel. Mao Forest is replying to that and saying that 14 billion is less than what the corruption is. I'm not understanding exactly what you're tweeting up. Mao Forest, kindly tweet that again to me. Kenya doesn't have money to boost collapsing small businesses that will also boost the country's economy, but have money for the referendum and its campaign for BBI. That will give youth 7 years tax break apparently. So you are saying that Kenya has money to support small business, but is not, and instead is doing a referendum and the campaign for the BBI. Some Kenyans think the BBI will support businesses. Anyway, let's wait. Kenya hatuna pesa, kwani iko nini? That is Gideon Kitheka on Twitter. Interesting feedback. Keep it coming. But right now, I am going to engage Ali. Welcome to KUTV's Biashara Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
You addressed really well.
Trying.
Try as well not to outshine me.
I'm not so sure that's really possible. I'm really, really happy to be here, and I can't wait to see how this goes.
Right. Thank you very much. Kenyan Wallstreet, how's that?
It's good. We mostly focus on investor news and analysis. Right. So we have a segment of global markets as well as another on local events in Kenya. And then we recently launched a podcast, the Kenyan Wallstreet podcast.
Which you host?
Which I host,
All
yes.
Right.
Thank you.
How's that going?
It's going really, really well. I am having quite insightful conversations with business founders, especially in the startup space in Kenya.
How is this? We just sat with someone who is about to work with, who's planning to work with 400 startups in the next 4 months. How is the startup environment for startups? Let's start from there in Kenya.
I would say rocky but optimistic. Rocky in the sense of coronavirus has affected quite a number in Kenya. Yesterday, Sef Boda announced that it's going to be leaving the market on the 27th.
Right.
And that hits around 4,000 Boda riders. And you can imagine other startups in Kenya, you know, in the delivery space getting affected, in the movement space. And so it's a little bit rocky, but then again,
what brings the optimism?
What brings the optimism, first of all, is the vaccine by Moderna, which has a success rate of 94.5%.
Yes.
So we're hopeful that coronavirus is going to be a thing of the past in the midterm, perhaps mid-2021. I hope so.
In the near future.
In the near future.
Okay. So now I'm trying to understand exactly how the U.S. politics have affected the operation of business across the world, but mainly the local markets that are here in the country. At Wallstreet, you are really keen on ensuring that you bring this content to us, and that is why that I'm really excited to have you on set today to have that discussion going. Now, Biden is a Democrat, and Donald J. Trump is a Republican. How is there going to be a difference in the transition between the two, and how is it going to affect the market? The world market.
World market.
Yes.
First of all, it's kind of hard to say that there's going to be really a transition in the international relations. Why? Biden is a Democrat, yes, but then the Senate is majority Republican. So we expect some sort of gridlock in passing major policy decisions. We might maintain some semblance of status quo at the moment. Two, we're waiting to see how Biden transitions, the free trade agreement between Kenya and the US, specifically looking at whether he's going to approach us.
Was the FTA already concluded or not yet?
No, it's not yet concluded. Negotiations are still ongoing.
Okay.
But then again, US being a country that trades with Kenya, passing the 1 billion mark last year, we're really quite keen to see whether Biden will approach us, as Africa through the Continental Free Trade Agreement or as Kenya directly through the FTA.
Now, the stocks shot last Monday, that is immediately after Biden was announced as a president-elect, and also the prospects of us having a COVID-19 virus. These two activities have affected stock, and I'm understanding at Kenyan Wallstreet, you guys are really keen on understanding even the stock market.
Yes.
How would you briefly say the stock market has been affected?
The Dow Jones shot up by 1.6%. That's a record high. Why? Because investors are optimistic now that we have a president that has a better handle with the coronavirus, plus the coming up of the vaccine, both by Pfizer and Moderna.
Right.
Coronavirus is going to be a thing of the past. Two, the Biden's
That's extremely optimistic.
That is extremely optimistic, but then what else do we have now?
Right.
Two, Biden is planning to transition the American economy towards bringing back jobs. With his plans to invest, or rather lift the measures towards the economy to bring back jobs, hopefully that might make things better. But then again, there's the other side of the coin. Biden proposes higher corporate tax as compared to Trump's.
Right. So we are still in, I'd say, a catch-22 phase where we really do not know.
Still catch-22, but then again, the prospects of recovery are better than the prospects of a higher tax in the short term, and that should explain why the Dow Jones shot up by 1.6.
Right. During Trump's tenure, he really focused on making a strategic shift from the war on terror to countering China's influence in Africa. How is that relationship going to look like going forward now that apparently people feel that Biden is going to be a bit more open towards the African market as compared to Trump? Is that an informed opinion, and do you feel like that there's going to be a shift in the China versus US relations to Africa and Kenya?
I feel like we're still going to maintain status quo in the sense of most US decisions towards emerging markets, including Kenya, relate to China's decisions. So we're still going to have that back and forth. I do not expect to see much changes in that space.
You do not feel like there's going to be much change?
There might be changes, but then again, there won't be as drastic as we expect.
What are the drastic changes then that you feel that the Biden presidency might have on Africa and on world markets in general?
I feel like some of the changes that we will see definitely come from Biden's sort of higher sense of diplomacy as compared to his predecessor. So hopefully we will have a better China-US relationships given his approach versus Trump's approach, which will also improve the trade between the US and China, and by extension, the rest of the world. Interesting.
How is the Kenyan shilling doing so far since the election?
We're still sort of weak. We're still around 109, and we are yet to see how.
109 is a very weak position for us.
Tell me about it.
Is there going to be a turnaround, or do you feel like there is going to be?
Hopefully, there's going to be a turnaround, but it's more of let's wait and see.
Now, Trump's policies lay the groundwork for unlocking the US private sector investment in this continent. In terms of imports that is coming in and the export, you said last year, Kenya, we moved past the 1 billion mark?
We did.
Right. Are we going to move more past the 1 billion mark? And the private sector, the relation between the private sector in the US and in the country, understandably so, because understanding the fact that a lot of what is happening in the States affects even the biggest players in that industry who might not necessarily be in line with the Democratic policies, the Democrat policies as compared to the Republican policies. Is there going to be a difference? Private sector relations with the US?
On private sector of the US relationships with Kenya,
yes.
I think there's going to be some sort of improvement that's going to come with the FTA. But this is, again, this is mid-long-term future after everything is settled down. And earlier I heard you talk about, tech industry in Kenya, specifically the Silicon Savannah. We expect more partnerships in terms of investment as well as in terms of transfer of knowledge. As we all know, Kenya is a booming tech space, and hopefully better partnerships between the private sector in Kenya through KEPSA and private sector in the United States is going to facilitate the transfer of both investments and knowledge.
Is this going to be a model for democracy even for us as Africans, the rise of Biden to the presidency?
Yes and no.
Right. How so? How so?
Yes, hopefully Biden's presidency mirrors Obama.
How so? Or because they are Democrats?
Because they're Democrats, and of course there's that personal relationship between the two, and I think that is how I'd like to look at it. But then again, the transition of Biden to presidency hasn't been as smooth. Trump is yet to concede, which is making his transition to presidency quite not as smooth as we expected. US being a superpower, be the beacon of democracy, that is not something that we African states who are still shaping our political systems expected.
Right, because they are apparently the free world, and they are ahead in terms of democracy.
If the free world is having issues with transitions of presidency, how about the rest of us?
Do you think it's going to be smooth? That's on a personal note.
Smoother, yes, now that some of the lawsuits by the Trump administration were thwarted down.
Right. Now, the power of the American dollar is, and the dominance of the U.S. companies is something that is known all over the world. Is there going to get to a point where this, because we can't always be on the receiving end of these relations, we can't always be waiting upon the U.S. to have a smoother political environment for us to operate better. Is there going to be a point where the power of the dollar and the dominance of these U.S. companies is going to be reversed, and we can also as well be able, because we can't always be discussing how we are waiting on the U.S. to have a smooth transitions for us to have business. Is there going to a point where these roles are reversed?
Roles are reversed in the sense of Kenya being, the Kenyan shilling being more powerful than the dollar.
And us having dominance in the market.
I feel like that is really, really, really long term, but I feel like the power of the U.S. currency might face challenges from other currencies in the world, as well as other economies, such as the rise of China, especially in the African space. We do know that many African countries have quite a strong relationship with China as compared to the U.S. Yeah.
Right. Now, the U.S. foreign policies are different depending on the president that is in power at that moment. How different are how different is Biden's foreign policies, especially to this market, as compared to Trump's foreign policies?
I feel like I personally haven't really gotten the time to really explore that into depth. But then, as I said earlier, we expect a more diplomatic approach as compared to Trump, as well as a balance between aid and trade. I understand that based on my previous conversations with the American Chamber of Commerce, Trump was more leaning towards trade than aid, just to promote a sort of self-sustenance in the relationship.
Now, let's get back to Kenyan Wallstreet.
Sure.
Kenyan Wallstreet. How long ago did Kenyan Wallstreet begin, and why is it the Kenyan Wallstreet? Because we have the Wallstreet, and now we have the Kenyan Wallstreet.
The Kenyan Wallstreet is around 4 years old, and we specifically call it the Kenyan Wallstreet because we focus on investor news, both locally looking at the NSC as well as policies in the CMA, as well as internationally in global markets like the US and China.
How big is your team, and how do you source this content?
Our team is around 12 strong. We source content, again, based on direct approaches from companies, as well as global news from the international markets.
Other than providing with content on investors, on the market, what else does Kenyan Wallstreet do for the businesses or the companies that you interact with?
So apart from providing news, we have direct partnerships with companies for content, such as through the podcast that I host, where we get to tell the different stories and the different changes happening, especially in the startup space.
Now getting back to you as a person now, your expertise into being in the Kenyan Wall Street, and of course, getting to host the podcast by Kenyan Wall Street, it means that you have you have skill, and I would love to understand your background and maybe someone who's watching to know exactly how you have this knowledge on what you are discussing with us with.
So I started hosting the Kenyan Wall Street podcast. I would say it was a nudge from my boss. My boss is like, hey, we have a podcast. Do you want to try it out? And I said yes. And I found it easy to host a podcast discussion because I'm personally invested in public speaking through the school. I was a member of a club called Tuseme at the University of Nairobi, Lower Kabete, where we nurture public speaking. And I also follow closely affairs in Toastmasters International.
Right. Do you have a background in business?
I do.
Right.
I'm actually a marketing major.
Ah, right. And where is that?
Still at the University of Nairobi, Lower Kabete.
You expecting to graduate? It's good work that you're already in the Kenyan Wall Street.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was the transition from, again, marketing more to lean towards communication and finance at the Kenyan Wall Street.
Right.
And that has been quite a journey for me.
Thank you very much for coming through on set with us. Sadly, we do not have so much time, but we will be having you again, the Kenyan Wall Street as well. I'm hoping that we have more time into the future, of course, to delve into much more matters, because I feel like you guys already have much more knowledge than I could have at this moment. 4 years of operation of the Kenyan Wall Street, that has to be a long time to know some of these matters. Now, maybe your last remarks, as well as maybe anything else, and where people can find Kenyan Wall Street to find some of this information, as well as find you as well.
First of all, thank you so much for joining this discussion. Again, on the U.S.-Kenya relationship, it's something to be on the lookout given the transition with the administration. More on Kenyan Wall Street, you can follow us on Twitter at the Kenyan Wall Street, as well as look at our website, which is thekenyanwallstreet.com, where you can find more news on investments, and startups. Personally, you can also look at some of the work I do at the Kenyan Wall Street podcast, where I have discussions with startup founders in the Kenyan space, as well as a new segment that we launched on offshore investments. Thank you so much.
Right, that is Ali from the Kenyan Wall Street, of course, helping us understand exactly how the Biden presidency, or the expected Biden presidency, is going to impact relations all across the world, and how markets are going to be affected. Here in Kenya, he tells me that things might be looking good, but we are not sure, right? Until then, we shall be taking a look at what is happening in the US. The President Donald Trump is still filing lawsuits and still tweeting, saying that he won the elections. So let's wait and see whether he won the elections. But come January of 2021, we expect President Joe Biden to be inaugurated as the 46th president, if everything goes as it goes. I'll be going for a short break and coming back to read your feedback on the topic of discussion of the day. Remember, I asked you when I started out, how exactly does politics in the country, the political environment, activities and decisions in the country affecting the business that you're doing, as well as any other business that you're observing around where you are. Stay tuned.